I was scrolling through a real estate app one sleepless night when I saw a photograph of my own living room. My husband's chair. The bay window. The curtains I had sewn with my own hands. My house was for sale. And no one had told me. I had not signed anything. I had not agreed to anything. 2 weeks earlier my daughter had moved me into the little guest house out back, smiling, holding my hand, telling me it was so I wouldn't be alone. Now there was a stranger photographing my living room, a lock I no longer had the key to, and a deed at the county office with my signature on it. A signature I never wrote. The worst part wasn't that they were stealing the house my husband and I paid off together. It was that they had already decided how the story would go. The forgetful old widow. The children who had to step in. They forgot one thing. I could still read. My name is Margaret, though everyone who has ever loved me has called me Meg. I am 69 years old, and for 41 of those years I lived in the same white house on Linden Street, the one my husband Harold and I paid off the spring before he retired. We burned the mortgage papers in the backyard fire pit and toasted with cheap champagne. That house was not an asset to me. It was the last place that still held his voice in the walls. Behind it, connected by a covered breezeway Harold built so his mother could come and go without crossing the wet grass, stood the little guest cottage. 1 bedroom, a kitchen, a porch. His mother lived there until she died. After that it sat sweet and empty, and the breezeway stayed, a small wooden bridge between the big house and the small one. Harold passed in the fall. By winter, the silence in those rooms had a weight to it, and my daughter Caroline began to worry about me out loud. "You shouldn't be rattling around in that big house alone, Mom," she said one evening, washing dishes she didn't need to wash. "The stairs, the upkeep. It's too much." I told her I managed fine. I did manage fine. But grief makes you pliable, and Caroline knew how to press. Then she had an idea, and she presented it like a gift. "The guest house," she said. "Out back. It's all on 1 floor. Greg and I could fix it up for you, and you'd be close, but you'd have your own space. We could take care of the main house for you. Keep it from sitting empty." It was Greg who sold me on it, really. My son-in-law sat forward with his easy salesman's warmth, the warmth that had closed 100 deals, and he painted it so kindly. No more stairs. The garden right outside my window. Sunday dinners still in the big house, with me walking over across Dad's breezeway. He was good. I want to be honest about that. The whole thing sounded like being loved. Still, I looked at the cottage and knew it was not my home. But I looked at my daughter's earnest face, and I told myself this was love. I told myself a mother says yes to her children. "All right," I said. "If you think it's best." She hugged me. And as I started to picture which of my things I would take, she said something that I would turn over in my mind for weeks afterward. "Don't worry about the rest," she said. "I'll handle everything." I should have asked what everything meant. The move happened fast. Faster than grief should allow. Within 2 weeks I was in the guest house with my clothes, my books, and the quilt Harold and I slept under for 4 decades. Caroline was a whirlwind of helpfulness. She took over my mail, so it doesn't pile up. She took my errands, my pharmacy runs, even the spare keys, so nothing gets lost in the shuffle. I let her. It felt good to be cared for. That is the thing I have to admit. I let her close the doors of my own life one by one, and I thanked her each time. Then one morning I walked up to the main house to fetch a winter coat from the hall closet, and my key didn't fit the lock. I tried it twice, thinking the cold had stiffened the metal. Then I noticed the lock itself was new. Brighter brass, a different brand. Caroline appeared at my shoulder so quickly I wondered if she'd been watching. "Oh, that," she said lightly. "We had the locks upgraded. The old ones were a security risk. It's just temporary, Mom, while we do some work on the house. I'll get you a copy." She never got me a copy. And as I walked back to the guest house, I saw a car I didn't recognize parked in my driveway, and a man in a pressed shirt standing in my living room window, holding a tablet up to the light, slowly turning to photograph the room. I told myself it was the renovation. What else would it be? But that question sat in my chest like a stone, and it would not dissolve. For a few days I made myself small and watchful, the way you do when something is wrong but you can't yet name it. The man with the tablet came back twice. Caroline called it the contractor. But contractors carry levels and tape measures, and this man carried only that tablet and a soft leather folder, and he wore shoes too clean for a work site. One afternoon Caroline left her purse on my porch table while she ran to answer her phone, and a folded invoice had slipped halfway out. I am not proud that I looked. But I looked. It was not a renovation invoice. It was a bill from a company called Bright Stage Home Presentation. Staging. Photography. Listing preparation services. When Caroline came back, I held it up and asked her, as evenly as I could, what staging had to do with fixing a roof. She barely glanced at it. "That's just the cleaning company, Mom. They use a fancy name." She tucked it back in her purse. "Honestly, you worry about everything now. It's not good for you." Behind her, Greg had gone very still at the railing, and then he asked, too brightly, if anyone wanted coffee. That night I couldn't sleep. I opened the tablet Caroline had given me to keep me busy, and out of some instinct I didn't understand, I opened a real estate app and typed in my own town. And there, near the top of the new listings, was a photograph of my own living room. Harold's chair. The bay window. The light through the curtains I had sewn myself. My house was for sale, and no one had told me. I did not scream. I did not call Caroline. Some old, careful part of me, a part one had not used in years, woke up and told me to be quiet and to learn. The next morning I told Caroline I was going to a grief support group at the church. Instead I drove 40 minutes to see Ruth, Harold's younger sister, the only person left who had known me before I was anyone's mother. Ruth listened to the whole thing without interrupting, the way only family can. Then she pulled the listing up on her own computer, and we read it together, line by line. The price was below market. The description was vague. And the street address had a single letter wrong, Linden, instead of Linden, the kind of typo that would keep the listing from showing up if a neighbor happened to search the real street. It was hidden in plain sight. On purpose. "Meg," Ruth said slowly, "a listing has to name a seller. Somebody authorized this." We scrolled down to the agent and brokerage information. Greg's brokerage. And under the seller of record was a name. It was not my name. It was a limited liability company I had never heard of, formed 3 months earlier. My phone began to buzz on Ruth's table. Caroline. Then again. Then a text. "Where are you? Who are you with? Call me right now." I turned the phone face down, and Ruth and I looked at each other, and neither of us said the word out loud yet. But we both knew. Someone had found a way to sell my home without me. The question was how. I came home to a casserole on my porch and Caroline's worried smile, and I played the part of the tired, grateful mother because I needed time. That night, after the main house went dark, I did something I am still not sure I should have done. Greg kept a black accordion folder in the mudroom, the kind of folder a man carries when he doesn't trust a desk. And the mudroom opened onto Harold's old breezeway, the wooden bridge between the cottage and the main house, the one passage Caroline in all her careful planning had never thought to lock, because who locks a door their own father built for his mother? I crossed it in my slippers and went through the folder by the light of my phone, my hands shaking. Most of it was ordinary. Insurance, warranties. But near the back was a manila envelope, and inside it were two documents that stopped my breath. The first was a transfer on death form for the house. The second was a quitclaim deed, transferring the property from me to that LLC. Both were dated 5 weeks earlier. Both bore my signature at the bottom. I had never seen either page in my life. I held the deed up close. The signature was good. It was very good. Whoever made it had studied my hand. But I always signed Margaret L. Whitfield, with my mother's initial, the L for Louise. And on this deed, the middle initial was an A. A small thing. A single letter. The kind of mistake you make copying a signature you've only seen a few times. I was still staring at that wrong letter when the breezeway door opened behind me and the overhead light came on. Caroline stood in the doorway in her robe, looking at the deed in my hands. "Mom," she said. "What are you doing in here?" For a moment neither of us moved. I set the deed down on the workbench, slowly, the way you set down something that might go off. "You can explain the rest later," I said. "Right now I want you to explain to me why my name is on a paper I never signed." Her face did something complicated. For just a second I saw fear, real fear, and not of me. Then it smoothed over into the patient, gentle expression she'd been wearing for weeks. "Oh, Mom." She sighed, and she came and took my arm the way you'd guide a child from a hot stove. "We did sign that. Don't you remember? At the kitchen table, the week after the funeral. You said you wanted us to handle things so you wouldn't have to worry." I would remember. "That's just it," she said softly. "Lately you don't. We've been worried about your memory for a while now." And then, the next day, she produced a letter. It was from a doctor I had seen exactly once, a referral after Harold died, when I couldn't stop crying and Caroline insisted I talk to someone. The letter mentioned grief-related cognitive concerns and some difficulty with recent recall. Caroline had it ready in a drawer, as if she'd been keeping it for the right moment. "No one's saying you're not capable," she said, holding my hand. "We're just protecting you. Protecting your interests. You misremember things, and that's okay, that's what we're here for." I understood then, with a clarity that frightened me, what was happening. They were not only stealing my house. They were building a story in which I could not be believed. If I went to anyone, it would be the confused widow making accusations. And they would be the devoted children, so patient, so sad about mother's decline. That was the night I learned the second thing they had stolen. I opened the email account Caroline had set up for me to keep in touch, and I started reading the sent folder, the messages I had never written. There were dozens. A version of me who was breezy and cheerful and could not wait to downsize and finally travel. A version of me who thanked Greg for taking such good care of everything. A version of me who told the title company she was so ready to close. My daughter had built a whole second mother out of my own name, and that woman had been speaking to the world for weeks, saying yes to my own erasure in a voice I almost recognized. I read until I felt like a ghost in my own life. And then I stopped feeling sorry for myself, and I started keeping records. I almost broke. I want to be honest about that. Earlier, sitting there with my own daughter holding my hand and telling me my mind was failing, I had almost believed her. Then Greg's truck had pulled up, and a woman in a blazer had gotten out with a clipboard, and Greg had called across the yard that the buyer's agent had come to do the final walkthrough, because closing was Friday. Friday. 4 days away. The next morning, while Caroline was at the store, I called the title company handling the sale. I told the woman who answered that I was the homeowner and I wanted to halt the closing. There was a pause, the kind of pause that means a person is choosing their words. "Ma'am, I'm a little confused," she said. "The owner already confirmed everything by email yesterday. She said she's eager to close on schedule." "I never sent any email. It came from your address." And she read me one of those cheerful messages I now knew by heart, signed with my name, written by my daughter. "There's one more thing I should confirm with you, since you called," the title officer said. "We have a second signer on the notarized documents. A notary named D. Pruitt." "Is that the notary you used?" I had never met anyone named Pruitt. I wrote the name down with a hand that wouldn't stay steady, and I thanked her, and I hung up before my voice could give me away. Because now I had a thread to pull. And I intended to pull it until the whole thing came apart. The county records office is a quiet room with bad lighting and a young clerk named Tom who, I would learn, paid more attention than anyone gave him credit for. I told Tom I wanted to see the recorded deed on my own property, and the notary log that went with it. He pulled them up without fuss. And when I showed him my driver's license, with Margaret L. Whitfield right there on it, and pointed to the A on the recorded deed, he went quiet for a moment. Then he checked something else. The notary commission. "This stamp," he said carefully, "belongs to a commission that expired before this date. A notary can't legally notarize with an expired commission. This signing shouldn't have been recorded at all." For the first time in weeks, I felt the ground turn solid under my feet. But Tom wasn't finished. He was frowning at his screen. "That's strange," he murmured, mostly to himself. He typed a little more. "This same notary, this same stamp, shows up on 3 other property transfers this year. All from owners in their 70s and 80s. All to LLCs formed a few months before the sale." He looked up at me, and we both understood that I had walked into something much larger than my own grief. Before I could answer, the door opened, and Greg walked in. He had a smile on his face and ice in his eyes, and he said, loud enough for the whole office to hear, that there had been a family misunderstanding, and that he hoped everyone could let a private family matter stay private. Tom looked at him, then looked at me, and very quietly slid a printout across the counter and under my purse where Greg couldn't see. "You'll want a copy of that," he said. "For your records." I drove to Ruth's with 3 other families' addresses burning a hole in my bag. Over the next 2 days, Ruth and I did the work that grief had made me too tired to imagine I could do. We found the other homeowners. The first was a widower named Sal, 81, who answered his apartment door in a cardigan and listened to me explain why I'd come. When I told him his house had been taken with a forged signature and an expired stamp, that he had not signed anything, that he had not imagined it, the old man put his hand over his mouth and his eyes filled. "My son told me I forgot," he said. "For a year I thought I was losing my mind. I started writing notes to myself so I'd have proof I'd been somewhere." His voice cracked. "You're telling me I was right the whole time." "You were right the whole time," I said, and I had to look away, because he was me, and I was him, and somewhere out there were 2 sisters and an old Navy man who had each been told the same quiet lie. The pattern was always the same. A struggling agent, a kindly relative or advisor, who took over the paperwork, a quiet move to a smaller place, a forged transfer, a quick sale below market to an LLC, and a notary stamp that didn't hold up. The houses were flipped within months for a tidy profit. And every single thread, when we followed it back, ran to Greg's failing brokerage. But Greg was not clever enough to do this alone. The warm letters, the patient management of frightened old people, the casseroles, and the hand-holding, that was not Greg. When I finally said it aloud to Ruth, she just nodded, because she had been waiting for me to get there myself. It was Caroline. Greg ran the fraud, and my daughter kept the victims calm. I confronted her that evening, alone, in the guest house her father built for his own mother. I didn't shout. I laid it out on the little kitchen table, one page at a time. The wrong middle initial. The expired stamp. The emails I never sent. And then, last, the 3 other families' names. Caroline looked at the pages for a long time. And when she finally spoke, her voice wasn't the gentle voice she'd used on me for weeks. It was small, and it was true. I only did it to save us, she said. Greg's business was drowning. We were going to lose the kids' college, the house, everything. He said no one would get hurt. He said the old people were moving anyway, that we were just speeding things along. She pressed her hands to her face. I told myself I was protecting you from the worst of it. I picked the guest house so you'd still be home. I thought if I was the one handling it, at least it would be gentle. You forged my name, Caroline. You told me I was losing my mind. I know. She was crying now. Mom, please. If this comes out, I go to prison too. I co-signed every loan. My name is on all of it. She reached for my hand the way she had when she was small. Please. Just let the sale go through. We'll give you the money. We'll make it right and no one ever has to know. And there it was. The real choice. Not the house. My daughter, asking me to bury a crime so she wouldn't drown in it. Then her phone lit up on the table between us, and we both saw the buyer's agent's message at the same time. Closing moved to tomorrow, 9 a.m. seller confirmed. Almost there. I had until morning to decide what kind of mother, and what kind of person, I was going to be. I did not sleep. But somewhere in that long night, the fear in me finally turned into something steadier. I called Tom at home, which he had not exactly authorized, and I called the elder law attorney Ruth had found. She explained, in plain words, exactly how we would stop it. A property owner who disputes a sale can file an emergency notice of dispute against the title. The moment it is recorded, the title is clouded, and no title company in the country will close on a clouded title. It freezes everything. The attorney would have it drafted and at the records counter the instant the doors opened at 8, a full hour before the 9 o'clock closing. Ruth, it turned out, had not been idle either. While I confronted Caroline, my sister-in-law had spent the evening on the phone with the state attorney general's elder fraud unit, and with the 3 other families, who, after months of being told they were imagining things, wept to learn they were not. The machine that Greg and Caroline had built to make old people doubt themselves was about to meet a roomful of people who finally believed each other. But there was one piece only Caroline had. The loan documents. The paper trail that tied the stolen houses to Greg's brokerage, the proof that turned a property dispute into a prosecutable fraud. Without it, Greg could call it all a paperwork error and walk away to do it again. I did not ask Caroline for it. I had decided I would not put that choice in her hands or in mine. I would build the case without her if I had to. So when she knocked on the guesthouse door at first light, I was not expecting what she carried. It was a banker's box, heavy in her arms, full of files. She set it on the porch where her father used to drink his morning coffee, and she looked older than I had ever seen her. It's all here, she said. Every loan. Every signature. Everything Greg did. Her chin trembled. I'll testify, Mom. I should have stopped it. I'll testify to all of it. I looked at my daughter, who had betrayed me and then, at the last possible hour, chosen the harder right over the easier lie. Both of those things were true at once. They would stay true forever. All right, I said. Then let's go stop it. The sale never closed. The notice of dispute was recorded at 4 minutes past 8, and by 8:30, the title company had called off the 9 o'clock closing. The buyer's agent left standing in my driveway with her clipboard and no one to sign. By noon the Attorney General's investigators had Greg's box of files, and within a week the recorded deed on my home was voided and my name, my real name, with the L for Louise, was restored to the property where I had burned a mortgage and a marriage's worth of memories. Greg was arrested. He did not go quietly, and he tried, right up to the end, to blame a confused old woman and a wife who didn't understand business. He even waived that doctor's letter about my memory, until the investigators called the doctor, who said plainly that he had met me once, for grief, and had never found me anything but clear, and that his words had been stretched into a diagnosis he never made. The letter that was meant to erase me became one more piece of evidence against them. The other 3 homeowners got their cases reopened. Sal got his house back. He called me the day he moved home and could not finish a sentence, and neither could I. The 2 sisters got a settlement. None of that would have happened if I had taken the money and stayed quiet. I think about that often. Caroline pleaded to a lesser charge for her cooperation. She will carry it for years, the record and the shame both. What she carries between her and me is a different account, and we are still, slowly, working out the balance. I moved back into the main house on a gray morning in early spring. I unlocked my own door with my own key, and the rooms smelled like dust and lemon polish and, faintly, still, like him. I did not lock the guest house behind me. I left the door open and the light on. People ask me how I can leave any door open for the daughter who did what she did. I tell them the truth, which is that I haven't decided everything yet, and that I may never fully trust her again, and that both of those things can live beside the simple fact that she is my child and she came back carrying the box. The house is mine again. My name is on the paper, spelled right. And when I walk through my own front door now, into a home that no one is managing for me, I am exactly who I have always been. A woman who knows precisely where she stands.